Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have Kieran here with me. He's one of our Designlab mentors. And I'm Emily. I am the community manager for Designlab. Very happy to have everyone here. If you guys didn't know, today we're doing episode 2 of our Figma series, which is awesome. Figma is definitely becoming one of the popular tools across the industry, which is amazing. It's highly collaborative, it's all online, and it just makes working with other people so much easier. But as we let everyone take some time to come in, feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from, why you're here. And then if you do have questions, we do have a questions tab on the right side, the right panel. So go ahead and toss your questions in the questions tab. So that way at the end of the webinar, we can get Kieran to answer some of them. But yeah, say hello in the chat, and I am going to hand it off to Kieran so he can introduce himself and so we can kind of chat about what we're going to go over today.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily, and thanks everyone for joining in. Yeah, as Emily sort of shared there, going to go through the second episode, which is all about colors. And again, this is very much an intro, so we're not getting into like advanced tips just yet. There'll be time for that. So we're taking it step by step, nice and easy, nice and slow. So we'll get there in the end. So yeah. Make sure you grab a coffee, grab something to drink, and let's get in. So let me start off by enabling my screen share. And let's go your entire screen and share that. Okay. And perfect. All right. So you'll notice even with this crazy inception right here, as I type, you will sort of see the keyboard shortcuts coming up. So hopefully that helps out a few people, because I noticed that a lot of people had a lot of questions about what keyboard shortcuts I'm pressing at the time. So I've enabled a little plug-in there to sort of like help us out there. All right, so let's get started. So inside of Figma, there's like quite a few different ways to approach color. But the main way that I'm going to sort of go through is let's start off by creating an artboard over to the side here. So a nice little frame. And I'm going to create a rectangle here. And we'll start off with just a basic fill. And what does a fill mean, and like how can we like change different types of fills in there? So let's edit this thing, and if we look into it, we get a few different things by default. We get a type, so we get a solid, a linear, a radial, angular, image, or diamond. So from linear to diamond, those are all gradient types, and then image. So we've got solid, and then gradients, and then we've got an image. And I'll go through each of those in just a minute. Then we've got our blending modes here. So this is things to help you, like maybe you want to blend one color on top of another color. And this is really handy for when you're trying to go for an artistic kind of vibe. So if we have something, maybe we want to do like an 80s kind of like color scheme, where we've got like a bit of like a pinky red and also like a sort of like a cyan kind of touch to the blue. We might grab both of those, and we might actually do like a bit of a blending mode on top of that to either darken the original color over another color. We can multiply. So again, it went a little bit darker, a little bit more of a purple over the top of that. And then we could do a color burn, which then like burns into the color, and so on. So each of these colors and blending modes have their own different effects that you can apply to them. So this is really cool if you're playing around and you're trying to do different effects with it. So play around with that, see what you can come up with. But it's a cool way to get some nice like overlapping colors and effects from it. All right. Then we actually have the actual like color picker here, right? So this actually helps us visualize what's going on. I'm just going to change this back to normal. This actually helps us visualize what's going on. Obviously, from the top left, it goes to white, and all the way down to the bottom right, it goes to black. And then we have saturation going from left to right. So meaning, if you think of saturation as a color, as a sponge that has been that's soaked up like a big bucket of dye, right? So over from the right-hand side means it's like fully saturated, meaning that the sponge is quite full of color. And then as you wring it out, it actually becomes less and less color. So as you can sort of see with a little preview here, as I go from right to left, it actually is getting rid of the color, which is that sort of like tealy, like aquamarine kind of color, right? So that's kind of like the visual color picker there. We also have the ability to use the hue slider here. So hue is like the color of the color, which kind of sounds a little bit meta, but what it is a on a spectrum from 0 to 360. So 0 being red and 360 being red, because 0 and 360 are equal. It goes from red to orange to yellow to green to blue to purple and pink, and then back to red again. And each of those values have each of those numbers have a specific color that they're associated to. And then we also have the opacity channel here. And this is just simply like if we're going to have some sort of opacity to it, some sort of alpha to it. So meaning, is it transparent or is it fully opaque? So let's, so 100%, that's fully opaque, and then all the way down to transparent. And we can adjust that number as we go along. Then we've got our color picker here. Sorry, our eyedropper, I should say. So the eyedropper, you can actually use two different shortcuts to use this, and this is actually Control C or I, and this both works in Mac and Windows for that same shortcut. So Control C, if you think about color, like that's probably like the best way to think about that. And I for eyedropper. I know it's not the same letter, but it's a nice and easy way to remember it. Then we can, if you actually look at the eyedropper, what you can actually do is you can actually move your mouse around, and you'll see up the top right here that it's giving me a hex value as I go along, and it's then like trying to figure out like what is the right and appropriate sort of size for everything, right? So it sort of like zooms right in, especially even like on something like this where it's like on a half pixel, it is even giving me that value as well. So you can use this to help out and do some really, really cool stuff. All right. What you'll notice is that it's a little bit different from Sketch. Sketch, you're able, because it's a native app, you're able to actually eyedrop outside of the current window. For this, you can't. So if I'm trying to eyedrop something from my desktop, it's not actually letting me go outside of the window and click on something. It's turning back to a normal cursor. So that's just something to be aware of there. All right. And then we've got our actual value that we have right now. So as you can sort of see, we have the hex color space at the moment. And then we also have the hex value. So right now it's AE, AE, AE. And then as we move around, you can see that changing. And then we have the actual opacity there. So right now it's set to 100%. And then we have our document colors down the bottom here. So our document colors are things that we are using inside of the document currently. So as we sort of like add more colors into it, this will actually add to it automatically, which is really cool. You can also add local colors, and your local colors are things that are associated to your color styles and stuff like that. So those two there, one's automatic, one's based on your styles, and it'll help you out like really, really fast for quick interactions with that. Personally, I don't use document colors and local colors all that often because what I'm actually trying to use is everything in the layer styles, in the color styles, and try to keep everything cohesive in that. And again, I will go through styles in just a moment. But let's go back to this color spaces for a second. So color spaces are quite important to know the difference between the two, between the available ones there. So we have hex, we have RGB, we have CSS, and we have HSL and HSB. So hex is going to give you a six like digit like alphanumeric like code essentially, and those things are related to R, G, and B. So the first two characters are red, the second two characters are green, and then the last two characters are blue. So as you go around, you'll notice that if we went to 100% red and we went all the way to the top right there, you can see that we've got FF0000, meaning that we've got a full saturation of red in there. If we did the same sort of thing with green, you'll notice that it goes there as well for the 100% green, right? And then if we do that for the blue as well, we'll eventually get to a blue there. That makes sense. So if we go 0000 FF, it goes to 100% blue there. So that's how hex works. So RGB is very, very similar, but instead of using two hexadecimal like characters, what it uses is a number from 0 to 255. So you get a range of 256 colors within each red, green, and blue. And again, you get the 100% like alpha channel here for our opacity. So nothing really changes there. You can still use the hue to get what you want. But then we've got CSS. So CSS is just doing the exact same thing, but it's using RGB. You can actually type in like hash FF 0000, and then it will it does nothing because it doesn't understand what the heck you're trying to do. It only like knows what RGBA is. So RGBA is the same as RGB, but it's got the alpha channel there. So RGBA is 96, 159, 186. So 96 for the value of red, 159 for the green, and 186 for the blue. And then you have the alpha channel is 1. So 1, it's on a scale from 0 to 1. So it's like 0.1 is 10%. 0.9 is 90%, and then 1 is 100%, 0 is 0, right? So that's how those break down. And you can do the same sort of thing for HSL. So HSL is hue, saturation, and lightness. So hue, saturation, and lightness, why is this like a good thing? Well, it does the same sort of thing as what I was explaining in hex, where hue is the color, right? And then saturation is the saturation of the color. So how much color is in the color. So again, think of the sponge full of dye. And then the lightness is just from top to bottom. You can sort of see that as I sort of like change the value here, as I go towards black, it goes to 0. As I go towards white, it goes to 100. So you have these 3 different values to help you out. So if we go to red, it'll give us the hue of 0, right? Because like I said, 0 and 360 are the same color, because that's how angles work. Then we've got saturation. So again, that's a percentage of from 0 to 100 of how saturated it is. So if we go to 100% saturation, you can see that this is a very vibrant red. If I go to, let's say, like 20% saturation, you can see that the color has been sort of like squeezed out of there. And then then we've got lightness. So 0 lightness all the way up to 100 lightness there. Then we've got HSB, and the only difference there is brightness. And what you'll also notice is that if we go to, if we switch between HSL and HSB, what actually happens is that HSL always goes to white, right? Like as you can sort of see, like at 100% lightness, it goes to white. If you go to 100% brightness, it actually has a color associated to it. So a lot of people like to use this as like their main way of like finding out colors. I in particular like to use HSL. The reason being that it is actually more used in HTML and CSS. There are ways to convert from HSB to HSL and hex to HSL and Rgb to HSB and so on and so forth. But I in particular like to use HSL because I find that it's a lot easier overall. All right, so that's our color spaces. And as you can sort of see, it's a little bit more granular in this kind of way. So why would you use HSL versus something like hex? Well, the reason why this is really good, if you wanted to do something like a quick color scale, so let's say that I've got this this pink here that I've just eyedropped. Let's say that I just wanted to do one shade darker and one shade lighter. Well, there's a few different ways that I can go about it. In Rgb, so if I went to Rgb or hex for that matter, I don't really have any recourse as to change this to be slightly darker or slightly lighter. I only have like a visual representation and sort of like eyeballing it and sort of going, that looks about right. And then if I go to this one, I want to make this one slightly lighter and like and hope for the best, right? Whereas if I use something like if I drop this again, if I use something like the HSL, I actually have a little bit more pinpoint accuracy in terms of I can say, you know what, I actually want to desaturate it by like 10%. By 10%, which would be 90. And I also want to like darken it by a little bit as well. So I'm going to say like maybe 20 points. So it becomes 49, right? So I have like a way to like actually mathematically do it, right? And then same sort of thing here is that I might want to like, again, saturate it or desaturate it and then use the numbers to help me out there. So you can use that and create some nice color scales using that, and it's much faster in that kind of way because you have those numbers to help guide you in whatever curve you decide to create. All right, so let's go into the different types. Now that we've sort of like got color, like understanding like what it looks like for a solid, let's have a look at what it looks like for a gradient. So let's just delete some of these here, and I'm just going to use maybe some of these purples and things over here. So I'm just going to steal this purple, and I'm going to steal this teal over here. All right, so let's create some gradients. So for a gradient, if you don't know what a gradient is, it's the easing from one color to another in the same sort of space. So depending on what type of gradient that you use, you may use a linear gradient. So the way that it eases from one to another is very linear in that it's not any sort of like shape to it. And then you have other like more shapely things like the angular and the diamond and the radial that we'll get into. So let's create a few of these gradients, and I'm just going to duplicate this out and just make this a little bit smaller, and so we can have a few side by side and can sort of see what they all mean. So let's do that and duplicate and duplicate. So let's go into our gray square that we've just created, and then I'll zoom back in so we can see what's going on. So for this, what I want to be able to do is I want to create a linear gradient for this. So by default, it will give us something that uses opacity, which is nice. But in this case, we're not going to actually use an opacity. We're going to use a transition between two single colors. So in this case, I want to actually use the purple. So I'm going to eyedrop that. And then I want to actually eyedrop the other one. So what you can do is you can actually click on one of these gradient stops and eyedrop that and create that. So now we actually have a gradient from a dark purple to a teal. And we've got this like nice sort of like gradient going between them. So you can actually add more than one stop. Sorry, more than two stops. You can actually add in like as many as you wish. So as you can sort of see, I can add in quite a few. I can then move them around after the fact, and I can get them to be exactly where I want them to be in terms of like, I might want to have a little bit more purple, a little bit more blue, and then I might want to delete this one, might get a little bit too complicated kind of thing. And I might just want to have just only a little bit of the green, right? So you can play around with that and get like pinpoint exactly what kind of gradient that you want. The other thing that you can sort of do here is you can actually adjust the angle of it by rotating this. It doesn't like there isn't much of an angle change because we're actually like not really doing anything just yet because it is a linear gradient. But what we can actually do is we can change the if we grab that last stop, this little node here, we can actually associate it to the two nodes that we have. So in the top right, we can then use this to snap. So as you can sort of see, it's actually snapping to that top right corner. Then we can do the same thing and snap it to the bottom left. And what that'll do is as we now duplicate this out, as we actually stretch this, you can see that the gradient is actually stretching with the shape, right? It's not just sort of staying still in this little square here. It's actually like associating it to the outside there. So if we click on the gradient, you can sort of see that that's happening. And of course, you can snap it to something like in the middle. It looks a little bit silly, but just to prove the point, you can actually do that and move that around like that. So this is really helpful if you are trying to like have a specific effect on a shape. All right, so let's go into what the difference is between like this kind of gradient and a radial and an angular and a diamond. Again, let's change this to a radial. Let's change this one to a angular, and then let's change this to a diamond. And let's also change the colors so we can actually see what we're doing. Let's have this really, really light gray. So let's use these colors again. So Control C to do this, selecting each of those stops and changing them as we go along. And then same sort of thing here. Go to our angular gradient, changing the purple and the teal, and then doing something like this with the diamond as well. All right. So what this is allowing us to do is actually use the same gradient, but across like different like shapes and sizes. So the radial gradient is really good for certain things. I in particularly like to use it to like give it a little bit more of a realistic effect, whereas like I hardly ever use a linear gradient. I use a radial gradient because it tends to like when we buy lights, for example, they tend to be like in a fixture that is round. So when we put a light on something else, it tends to cast a circular kind of light pattern. So when we're trying to imitate real life, a radial gradient is really good for to make things look realistic in terms of you're putting a light source on the current color, rather than a linear thing that doesn't really exist in real life. So yeah, so that'd be why I'd use that the most. diamond and angular are more for things where you're trying to go for a very specific look on something. But yeah, for me, for example, this kind of angular gradient is really used a lot for things like switches and knobs, a whole lot. Because what you can do is you can actually like for if we go into it, you can actually change every single part of this. So I see a lot of people use this as a way to, let's add another stop in here, and then add another one here, and another one here. So I see a lot of people use this as a way to sort of like move this in and move this in, and sort of like have like a highlight. And so it kind of starts to look like a shiny knob, like a metal shiny knob, as you sort of like add more of these to it. And you can sort of see that like playing out if you go and dribble and stuff like that. You'll see a lot of those kinds of designs. So with this, each of these have their own way of editing the gradient. So all of them have the ability to add more than 2 stops, right? But each of these have their own little node here that you can then use to stretch like the gradient in whatever way, as well as, again, associating the end stops to a corner or to the side, and then like again stretching it out to sort of like fit whichever way you want it to go. So in this case, I might want it to be in the top left here, and then as you can sort of see, like as I bring in this, it sort of like has like more of a light source that is a little bit more radial or whatever the case may be. But as you can sort of see here, by doing this, it actually looks a little bit more realistic as a gradient, right? This is a little bit too robotic. I find that this is it's just a nice gradient in terms of that. So that's like one way to level it, your gradients up, is to just use a radial gradient and play around with like where that anchor is to help you like figure out how big the actual gradient should be. So the same sort of thing with the angular gradient. If I click into that, you can see as well, I can adjust that as I move around, and I can adjust the stops and the positioning of the stops, and obviously move the middle stop as well to wherever I so please. And yeah, go from there. And then lucky last, we've got our diamond. So the diamond is almost identical to the radial. The only difference there is that it's a diamond shape rather than a circle shape. So if we, again, move it around, you can sort of see that it's going outwards from there, and it's making sort of like a cross-section thing there to make a diamond. And of course, you can then adjust all of these and then make it bigger or smaller depending on what you want to do there, and go from there. So yeah, so each of these have their own like ways of using this and like creating like a nice set of colors. But now that we've gone into like colors for solids, colors for gradients, the only one that we have left is images. So let's go into images and what that is. So it's not strictly a color, but I think it's worth addressing in the colors section because it's actually part of the color picker tool itself. So I want to go through images, and it's also something that I get quite a lot of like questions about, like how do I add images in there, and how do I not how do I crop it to the right size, and how do I make it like responsive and all that kind of stuff, because people are using like image masks and stuff like that. So let's dive in and go back to Chrome, and let's find some images to use. So let's go to Unsplash, and let's grab some images here. So let's just use people, because it's very easy to tell when a person is stretched in the face. So let's use a person here. So let's grab this hipster guy in a neon sign. I'm on a neon kick at the moment, so I'm gonna do that. So let's use him over to the right hand side. Sorry, to the left hand side here, and we're going to paste in here. So all I've done so far is I've copied the image to my clipboard and I've pasted this in, right? So as you can sort of see, by default, it adds it as an image, right? So that's pretty straightforward. That's what would happen in Sketch or happen in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever. It would come in as an image type of layer, right? And that's perfectly fine. But what we're actually wanting to do is something a little bit different. We're actually wanting to use this as a fill on a shape. So rather than having it as an image, we'll actually create a rectangle, and we're going to go over to our colors, and we're going to change it to an image. So let me zoom in on this. There we go. And what we have by default is a few different things. So we have a fill. So this is the type of way that the image is going to be adjusted to the shape. So we have fill, fit, crop, and tile, and I'll go through those in just a minute. We have the opacity there, the size there. So if we do a tile, it'll go to 50%, or you can change it to 100% or 200% or whatever the case may be. You can then also rotate the image. And then you can also do some really basic photo editing. And I mean very basic. It's just like adding an exposure or contrast or saturation and so on and so forth, all the way down to shadows and tints and stuff. But I'm not going to do anything with that right now. What I'm going to do, however, is I can actually choose an image from here. So I can click into this and choose an image from my desktop or downloads and add that in. Or I can actually click into this and there's no visual change here, but if I hit Command V, it will do nothing because it's not going to listen to me. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just save this to my downloads. So let me do that. Let me go to Chrome and let me save the image. So download for free and wait for it to download. Cool. So let's do that. Let's change this because what I failed to mention is that Command V only works if you've already got an image inside of there. So let's do that. So let's open up this image. So what you'll see is that it's a 5.8 megabyte file. It's a pretty big image too, 3840 by 5760. That's a massive image, but we'll use it anyway and hit open. So what that's now done is that's uploaded the image to be inside of this fill and to be inside of this shape. And what you'll notice as well is that it's actually filling it in a way that it isn't true to its original aspect ratio. So its original aspect ratio is very much a portrait shot, right? But as you can sort of see, I can actually manipulate this and it can be all types of different things. So what it's doing is it's actually trying to find the shortest side. So in this case, the shortest side is the width, and it's saying, okay, the width always has to be the as big as the smallest sides that's currently there. So there's no way of it to never actually have a blank part of the image showing. So this is really good for responsive images. So you can imagine like on desktop, it might be super big. And then on tablet, you might go into this sort of size. And then on mobile, you might sort of go into this sort of size. Or simply that you keep the same aspect ratio and you just make it smaller and smaller, right? As you go along. So fill is a really good default. And it's actually what I use for like 95% of my designs. There's very rare conditions where I might use a fit. So a fit is good for things where you want to know what the aspect ratio actually is. So so this is good for things like when you're wanting to make like an upload screen. So let's say that you're creating you're mocking up a screen that is showing users how to upload an image to a website. You might actually want the image preview to show what aspect ratio it is, so that when a user goes to use that image in the application, that they're not surprised that it doesn't fit to whatever they need it for. So yeah, so fit is there. Crop, as the name suggests, allows you to actually crop the image. So if you wanted to like crop the image in a specific way, you can do so. And then all you have to do is hit enter to then finalize that. And that then, as you can sort of see, also stretches the image if you then stretch it. So this is like the normal behavior of what you would have like with this kind of image, right? So as I sort of like stretch that around, that's actually using the fill there as well. So that helps out a whole lot. So by default, this now gives us the ability to also tile it, right? But because this image is so big, it's probably not going to be the like the tile that we want. So what I'm going to set it to is like a 10% size. So this is really good for things where we want to actually like repeat a background, right? And again, you can press enter and you can just stretch this out to be whatever. And then we've got our sort of design. And whatever you want to do with that, you can go nuts on that. So this is really good for things like if you wanted to do some patterns or like shading or something like that, and you wanted to reuse that same thing over and over and over again. Obviously, you wouldn't really use it in this kind of context, but it's just to prove what we can do with it. All right, so that's the image fill and what you do. So like I said, 99% or 95% of the time I use this fill property because I find that it's the best way to do that. And as you go along, it means that you don't have to use an image mask or anything like that. The main thing to consider here, though, is that the original image does have to be centered and centered. So if you're centered horizontally and vertically as well. So the reason for that is because as you go from this size to this size, you'll notice that his face stays in the middle no matter what. And that's no coincidence. That's no black magic. It's literally just the fact that his face is centered both horizontally and vertically inside of it. So let's grab the next thing, which is styles. So styles is where it starts to get really, really cool, right? So let's delete all of this and move out of the way. Well, actually, let's keep this in because we can actually use image like colors and stuff like that. So over on the right-hand side here, I've actually gone ahead and created a whole bunch of styles, right? So I've used like a few different tools to generate some colors, and I've created some grays, some reds, some greens, some oranges, some purples, and some teals. And then I've also graded them from 1 to 900. And then I've also given them the contrast ratio with black and white. So as you can sort of see, there's a high contrast ratio with black here, and then a very low contrast ratio, so much you can't even read it, and with white. And then I have both the hex value for that as well as the HSL value, so that it's nice and easy for a developer to eyeball it and say, yep, that's the right color, and go from there. But why are styles important? Well, styles help you keep your design nice and clean, right? So let's say that I had let's quickly create a button. So this is a button, and I'm going to zoom right in on this. So I've got 16 and 24. Great. I'm going to hit Shift A to do auto layout. Auto layout is a great tool and feature. I don't have time to go through it today, but do not worry, we will be going through that at some point because it is a really killer feature of Figma. And let's also set this to a white here. Let's set this to a 4. And we're going to create this to maybe like a 24 and a 12. The bottom. So as I go along, and I'm going to change it to a vertical. I know that I did that super quick, but today's lesson isn't about auto layout. That'll be coming later. So in this, this is a button. So as I want to change this, I can say like, no, this is a button. Right, so we have the ability to change as we're like creating this. We're able to change. Oh, sorry, we're able to change the layout of it. So we have this, and maybe we have also like a header, right? That might be, I don't know, like 32, right, or a heading, I should say. And let's just change this to 44 pixels high, something like that. And we're also going to change that to purple, right? And then we might also have, I don't know, like an icon, right? So let's just pretend that that's an icon there. So what we're doing here is we're eyedropping a whole lot, right? And eyedropping is fine, but it's not as accurate as actually using like color styles. And you actually burn a lot of time by like control C or pressing the I key and doing that over and over again. Whereas if you actually use color styles to help you out, it makes it a hell of a lot easier. So let's duplicate this, and one will be with styles and one will be without styles. So in this case, what we're actually going to do is we're going to select all the things that are purple in this case, and we're actually going to change this by using the little style here. We actually have a whole bunch like ready to go. So we can sort of see like there's a whole bunch in here that are actually created. And we can use them by default. So if I use the purple 600, you can then sort of see there's no change because I actually eyedropped purple 600 before. But what happens is if I then decide to change purple 600, so if I edit the purple 600, what you can sort of see is as I move around, it actually changes all three of them all at the same time, right? So you can imagine how powerful this is if you have like literally hundreds of frames, hundreds of pages. You can change this all just with one click. It's actually really awesome for this. So how do we create something like this? This is nice and powerful, but how do we actually create something like this? Well, to create it, it's actually not that hard. So I'm gonna undo that. So green isn't purple. So let's use this. Let's create one. So I've got this gray here. It's a very boring gray. So I'm just going to go and use a pink, right? A color that we haven't got in our scales here. And I'm just going to give it a little bit more red, and I'm going to give it a little bit more saturation, right? Okay, so now that we've got our pink, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a style for it. And to do that, all we have to do is click this little 4 dot like icon here. I'm not quite sure what the 4 dots represent. I've tried to find Figma videos on that. So if you find out, let me know, because it's really bugging me. I'm not quite sure what it actually means. But yeah, hit the 4 dots there and then do the style. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a style, right? So we can sort of see that we have a different viewport here. So we can show it as a list, or we can just do it as as sort of like a grid layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this. So to create this, I can just simply say pink, right? Or I could give it a semantic name, so a more functional name. So maybe it's like my brand color. So I might say primary brand color, or secondary brand, or tertiary brand, or whatever the case may be. So I might use that instead. So let's create that. Sorry, I just exited out of that and create that style. And what you'll notice is that I have it here now, and as I hover over it, it's giving me the name there. But what you'll also notice is that I like to use scales. I like to use a whole bunch of different shades and tints of the same exact like color. So if I wanted to do a darker pink or a lighter pink, I don't really have any way of like creating that in my color styles unless I actually change the naming convention of it overall. So let's change this. So I can actually click into it and right click on it and then say edit style. Edit style allows me to do a few different things. One is editing the actual name of it. which is pretty handy. You can actually add a description as well. So this is good for maybe you want to keep it in terms of a brand color, right? So like a semantic color. So maybe you want to say that this is my primary color, right? My primary brand. But then you want to add a description of that this is the pink 500 or something like that, right? So you're describing like what shade of pink it is out of the spectrum, but then you're associating it to the primary brand. So that might be a way to have the best of both worlds in that way. Then we've got our properties. So as you can sort of see, I can then actually change this to whatever. But I want to keep it as this nice pink here. And again, I can change it to a HSL or HSB or Rgb or so on. But the visual representation is always going to be in a hex value overall. And then you've got the 100%. Opacity. I can also hide it. I'm not quite sure why you would hide a style color inside of that. It's a bit of a weird one. You can also add like multiple fills inside of this. So as part of the color style, you might actually want to add multiple things into that. So that might be a thing for you for sure. But we're just going to stick with a basic pink for now. And we're going to hit back. And now we have our primary brand. So I'm going to change this to our pink / pink 500, right? And what that's going to do is that's actually going to create, if we go into our style, sorry, you can then see that it's actually created a heading of pink. So that pink / what that's done is that's created a heading of pink. And you'll notice that that's the same sort of thing for all of these. So if I go to my oranges, I've got orange / orange - 900. So it's giving me the heading of orange, but then it's also giving me all the different colors within that. So it's a good way to group everything and keep your colors organized. So you don't have like pinks and reds and purples and whatever else all throughout your design all over the place. So yeah, so that's your color styles and keeping yourself organized, as well as you can start typing in red, and you can do a bit of a search for this. So that makes it a little bit easier for you as well. All right. So that's what color styles are in a nutshell, is being able to like reuse that as well. The other thing that you can do is I've shown you how to edit one, but I can also show you how to detach one. So maybe you don't want this to, so for example, this one here is linked to the purple, but maybe you want to experiment and you don't really want to mess up the button anymore. You can actually detach that from there. So it'll keep it as the same hex value for the purple. But what will happen is now if I change this purple, so if I edit that purple and change it to something else, so if I change it to something really dramatically different, you can then sort of see that it's now no longer linked to the purple that we had before, and it's now using its own thing. So you can then experiment in that kind of way and change it to whatever way you want to do it without messing up your whole design. All right, so let's undo that and make purple again. And yeah, so let's go into our different uses of styles. So as I mentioned, you can use your color styles on fills. You can also use it on strokes. So this is really cool for, again, like if you were creating a button, but let's say that we wanted to do a 2 pixel inside here. And let's just let's just change this fill to white for now. We can actually use the color styles that we've set up here and use the purple 600 for this, or use whatever color you wish inside of that. But it'll use that. And again, if I change, so this is, if I click into this one, purple 600, again, if I change that purple, it's then going to still change everything. Right, as I go along the spectrum here, it is actually going to change everything that is associated to it. All right, So that makes it really, really easy for you to keep your fills and your strokes in there. You can also do it on text, as you saw. And with text, there is actually a text style, which we'll get into in a later situation and go through it then for our episodes. But let's just quickly create a text style, and we'll just call it heading for now. It's not a great naming style, but we'll get to that in a later episode. But what you'll see is that it actually has, if we change this to our purple 600, what you can actually see is that you are using a different style on the same object. So you're using two styles on top of it. So this text style is actually using just font size, font weight, and a few different other properties. So font size, the actual font family itself, the font weight, the font size, line height, and then the letter spacing, and then we have our paragraph spacing. It's also got all of the other type details that you can go into. And again, I'll be doing a whole episode on just typography and using the text tool and all that kind of stuff in a later episode. But yeah, so that's styles in a nutshell for colors. Of course, there's text styles, there's effect styles, and again, I'll go over those later on. But those are all like really great ways of doing like keeping your document nice and clean. All right, so now what you'll notice here as well is that I've actually got all of these colors, right? But if you look over onto the right-hand side here, you'll notice that there are some things that I've got selected that there's a panel called selection colors, right? And what selection colors, this is a relatively new feature to Figma. It came out a couple of months ago. And what this is this tells you like when you've got colors that aren't being used as styles. So this is, again, really a great way to keep your document nice and tidy overall. So let's actually do that. Let's like select all these items that I've created with all these like different like colors and gradients and all kinds of crazy stuff. So really all we have are these colors inside of that. So we don't, what you'll notice is that we don't actually have white and we actually don't have black as our two colors in there as well. So there are some colors that we need to add to the thing. So what we'll also see is that we have all of these that are being associated to a color style. And then we also have some things that are the same color as the color style, but they aren't associated. They aren't like actually linked to the color style. So just like I sort of said with this purple, even though that it's the same hex value, same RGB value, same HSB value, whatever, although it's the same value, it's not actually linked to the purple. And that's a problem, right? We need to like make sure that that is linked to it. So as we create all of these, as we select all of these, you can start to see some of these colors like come up. So you'll see that this purple here actually comes up. The cool thing about this selection color is that you can use this as a way to what you call lint your design. So linting is a way to like clean up anything that you might have. So it's a coding term that you might have heard of if you're working with a developer. They have a code linting tool, which essentially like helps them write better code and make fewer mistakes. And that's kind of like what this is, a step in the right direction. Is this helps us make sure that we're associating colors to our different things. So let's say that we have this black here. So what we can do, there's two things that we can do. We can actually target all the layers that are using black. So if I do that, you can then sort of see that it's actually being used for all the text inside of here, right? And the cool thing about that is we can actually do a few different things. We can change the color if we wanted to, which we don't really want to. But we can also like create a new style from that, right? And let's create a new style, and I'm going to call it neutral. and then /black, and then hit create style. And the cool thing about that is now all the layers that I had selected are now all black. So I don't have to go that are associated to that color style. So I don't have to go in individually and select every single one of those. That would be a nightmare. Don't do that. Like use the tool to help you out. And now what you'll notice is that like if I select all of those same layers, that black is now no longer there. It's actually part of the selection colors as a style now. It's no longer in this unruly set here. Then I can go ahead and speed up that process by just clicking here and then adding this and saying neutral /white, and then create that style. And what that'll do is that that speeds up the whole process of selecting all of those items and creating, as you can sort of see, that's actually selected every single one of those items and has changed everything that had that white color to the white style, right? So again, it just saves so much time overall. So let's select all of those again. And then we have this one here, this 2213D, blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to associate it to an existing class. So all we have to do is click that little 4-dot menu there, and then click this purple, because that's, click the gray, because that's what the 22213D is this really dark gray here. So you can sort of, it's very hard to see, but that's the hex value there. So that's what I'm going to use there. For this purple, again, we're going to use our purple 600, nice and easy. For this, and then we go to our teals, go to our teal 600, and so on. So what you'll see is that as you're sort of like adding this in, you'll see that a lot of your designs are now like nice and clean. So then you keep going with that. Then you would add, like, if you wanted to add linear, if you wanted to add your diamond, if you wanted to add angular or radial gradients to your color styles, you definitely can. Those are all like absolutely perfectly fine to do. Works exactly the same way, but maybe you want to like make a folder that's called gradients. So you have like gradient / radial or gradient / whatever the function of it is, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, you go from there. So that's styles and selecting styles, and that kind of like wraps up all there is to sort of like learn about color. The rest of this is going to be just talking a little bit about plugins and some cool plugins that use color to help you out. So I've got a few images here, and if we go into our plugins, the first one that I want to show you is like just finding, again, like I'm on a bit of a tear with neon signs at the moment, and like what I'm trying to do is find the average color of this. So I could come in here, of course, and create a rectangle and just like eyedrop this and like find a few different like colors that I might like inside of here, and find something that I like and eyedrop those. Of course, you can do that, like no problem at all. But if you're in a hurry and you want to get the average color, like you want the overall vibe of that that image, not very specific colors, there's a few plugins like Image Palette that actually helps out. So what I've got here is I've got these images selected. They're nothing special about them. I've just copied and pasted them in from the internet, and I'm going to hit Image Palette. And what that's going to do is that's going to generate 5 colors from each of these images as like the quote unquote main image. The main colors for those images. So what you'll sort of see here is that it's not picking exact colors. What it's doing is it's doing like an average of those colors. So again, it's sort of like the quote unquote vibe of the image, right? It's giving you like, okay, well, what is sort of like the main colors and what are the average colors being used for there? And what it tries to do is it tries to give you as different of colors as it possibly can. So it tries to like find the ones that have the most variance in the hue, right? Because like for something like this specifically, if we sort of like look at the image, it's mostly dark and it's mostly pink, and it's got like hints of like a tealy blue color and a bit of green in there and all that kind of stuff. But if we were to look at like the actual physical pixels and what's actually there, it's mostly dark. And if we were to associate like the color based on how many pixels are associated to it, you would have a lot more shades of like this sort of like darker, sort of grungier sort of color there than you would anything else. So it works pretty well in terms of like trying to find different colors within it. And of course, you can then grab this and go, you know what, but I actually want this really specific pink inside of here or something like that, or this one here. So you can then find whatever value you want from there. But yeah, so that's a really quick way to do that. Another one is a styler. So this is a really cool plugin. This has other applications outside of color, but I've recently discovered this plugin, and it saves you just a buttload of time. So let's have a look at this. Let's actually just like generate this red scale again really quickly. So I'm just going to duplicate this out to be red, double that, and then double that again, and then one extra one on the end, right? And again, just super quick, just eyedrop everything. I've lost my place already, and I'm only a couple of colors in. There we go, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so if I eyedrop those, you'll notice that it's not actually picking up the styles that are associated to it, right? So this is not too great for that. So what I would do in this situation is I would actually grab all of these and select these to be like to rename these and create this into a color thing. So let's actually rename this so that they have the same sort of like a scale, like the red / red -100. So it's nice and easy. Except I'm not going to call it red. I'm just going to call it rod. I know that that's not like the name of it. So yeah, don't pick on me for that. But let's go to this, and I'm going to use a plugin called Rename It. So we're going to rename the selected layers. This has a whole bunch of different features associated to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to call it rod, like I said, and rod / and then rod dash. So in each of these, it's actually just going to rename all of these pretty quickly. It isn't in sequential order, which is a little bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this is actually in sequential order first. So I'm going to put this at the top here. And then use this and then put this in the sequential order. You'll see why in just a second, because you can actually use your sequential order for your naming convention to help you out. So I think that's right, 23, 25, 27, yep, and then 26, cool. So we can actually use the layer, like, so if I click down, you'll sort of see that it's going top to bottom, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. All right. So now if I select it and I go to rename it and say rename selected layers, I can rename all of these. So rod / rod dash, and then I can use the layer name, the layer width, the layer height. We can actually use some of those to use as a variable inside of there. So that's really cool. So you can actually do the number sequence from ascending to descending. So I'll do that. And what you'll notice is that it goes from 1 to 9, which is actually not the right way. I want to go descending. So I want to go, I want to delete that one first. And then I want to then say 0, 0 at the end of it. So what that's now done is that it looks a little bit weird that it's got this like %n, but that %n is this number sequence descending. So that's why it was really important for me to get the right numbers in the right order. So then that way it names all of those really, really quickly. And I don't have to mess around and go copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste a million times and then hit rename. So, oh, it's done it in the exact opposite order. Okay, let's undo that and do the same exact thing and find and replace. I can never, oh, sorry, not find and replace, sorry. Rename selected layers. And I'll do the same thing again. Sorry about this. So rod/rod dash and layer number ascending, right? And then we'll do the 0, 0 again and rename that. So now it's the correct way. So we've got 900 being the darkest and then 100 being the lightest. And that's really cool because now we've got that set up. We can then go into something like the styler plugin and we can generate styles based on that. So instead of like having to sit here and click on each one of these, press the little plus, press that, press this and type in rod/rod dash 900, blah, blah, blah. We can hit cancel and we can select all of these, go into the plugins, go into styler and then generate styles. So generate styles, what it'll do is it'll grab the name of the layer. That's why I took the time to name those layers and do that. So if I hit generate styles, what will happen is the plugin will run, hopefully, in the background. It won't make me a liar. Nope, nothing is happening. That is not good. Come on, what's going on? Styler, come on, generate, please. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why it didn't work the first time, but there it is. So it's created 9, it's updated 0, it's renamed 0, it's made no changes. But what we can see over on the right-hand side here is that we actually have these colors in use. So if we scroll down, we can then sort of see our reds, but we can also see our rods in there as well. Okay, so that's styler. And of course, you can use that for typography as well, using the same like naming convention tricks and stuff like that. And then the last set of plugins that I'll sort of like, one other one that isn't really part of the plugins, which I linked to in the chat, which is by a guy called Hike. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But he has a whole bunch of stuff in there that is like generating a color scale. There are a few color scale generators in Figma as a plugin, but I know that this is actually like a lot more helpful in this kind of way. So the cool thing about this is that you start off with a single color, and then you can generate darker and lighter tones, and then you can also mess around with like how dark it goes, if there's a hue angle shift or whatever, if there's a saturation shift and so on. But the reason why this is important is because I can then say, copy this as an SVG, and then I can paste this in here. And then now I have my vectors here. And again, we have it in this order where I've got this top to bottom. So this is at the top and this is at the bottom. So I can actually use this plugin again and say, rename the selected layers. And then I'm going to call it, I don't know, just green for now. So green or maybe teal. I think I don't have that. Teal/teal. And then I've got dash, and then this one is the number descending, and then 0, 0, and then rename that. And then that's given me the different names. So I've got the 900 to 100, perfect. So I can select all of those, go to my plugins, hit styles, and generate those styles. And then I have all of my my things there, right? And as you'll notice, I actually had teal as a color already. So that little, I don't know if you saw it or you missed it, but it did say that it was 9 updated. So it actually updated my current styles rather than messing around with creating a duplicate of that. It's actually updated them. So that's really cool. So yeah, so you can use other tools outside of Figma and then use other plugins that are already existing. So one last lucky like plugin sort of like set is accessibility. And this is like a really key thing for me. So there's two that sort of like stick out One is able and one is stark. So I love Stark, and I've been using Stark for a long time, including when I was using Sketch a little bit more full time. But I feel as though that Able actually does a better job in terms of the Figma like plugin set here. So let's have a look at what they both do. And let's just quickly do this because we have run out of time, and I'm sure a lot of you have things to do. So let's create this, and let's also like use a really light green or something like that. All right. So we have these two pretty different colors here. So let's select both of those, and we can use Stark. We'll go through Stark first because it has a smaller feature set. So the first one is color simulation. So it actually can simulate like color blindness, which is really cool. So you can actually show what it looks like for people who have protanopia or deuteranopia or tritanopia. And you can sort of like see like how how much less of blues and greens or reds that they sort of see throughout. And then you can hit done on that. You can also run the check the contrast tool. And this is using the WCAG standards of like the 4.5 and all that kind of stuff. And as you can sort of see, it sort of like wants you to click on like get above a certain contrast ratio. In this case, we're at 5.84 to 1. So it's a AA standard, which is what most people aim for, and a AAA standard if you're trying to get extra brownie points. So yeah, a 7:1 ratio is a nice ratio there. And then you can hit done for that. So what that allows you to do is ensure that people are able to read your text. This has a little bit to do with color blindness, but it's not always just color blindness. Sometimes it's just people who like have a hard time seeing, right? And that sort of like helps them out, like determine like one color from another. And then we can hit done. And then so the same sort of feature set is inside of Able, but I tend to like Able better because of a few different things. So one, it gives you the 2 hex values, so that's nice. It also gives you a direct link to the contrast guidelines, so you can sort of see if you're new to what color contrast is, it can give you that direct access. And then you can also turn on previews. So this sort of like wraps the 2 plugins into one. So you can go into weak green or like no green or weak red and so on and so forth. So you can actually see what it looks like for all of those. And you can see like what the difference is. So yeah, so I know that ran a little bit longer than what we usually do, but as you can sort of see, there's a lot to go over with colors and styles and everything that goes into it. So hopefully you got a better understanding of color and how to use color now in Figma. So yeah, let's open up the floor for some questions.
Awesome. So really quickly, I know you just went through all of the plugins at the end, but we're getting a request to have you go through just the names of the plugins that you just went through.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'll just hold it open there. So if someone wants to like take a screenshot, they definitely can. I'll just do a quick rundown of what these are. So Able, accessibility, Angle, mockups. It's kind of in the name. It does mockups of like iOS devices and Android devices. Arc, like Arc. Then there's another one that's similar. Skewed at, and there's another one in there somewhere. They all sort of like manipulate shapes in some sort of way. So Arc is arcing a shape. Skewed at is skewing a shape. So like if you think of like italics, it's like italicizing a shape. Color designer, color kit, all of those are all things of like, I was playing around with those, but I didn't really like any of them. They are trying to do your color like tints and shades, but I don't really like them. I use the high hike ones there. Font scale, that just generates a font scale. Giphy canvas, that allows you to use or doesn't allow you because the opportunity is already there, but it helps you put GIFs into Figma. Image palette is what you saw before, where I took the average colors there. Lottie files helps you bring After Effects files and convert them using Lottie and then put them into Figma. Again, for your prototypes, if you want to have like confetti being thrown, you don't have to prototype that inside of Figma. You can actually use After Effects, a really good animation tool, to bring that into here. Mapsicle gets you Google Maps in there. So this is really good for contact pages and stuff like that. Rename it. You saw the power of that. It's really, really powerful renaming tool. Roller is a design linter. So what I was talking about before about linting your designs, that helps you keep your files nice and tight. Semantic color sync. So this is something that I touched on last time, but it's about like having a different naming convention for your colors. So a lot of people use a like more of a what's it called, like a systematic way of like naming their colors. So like pink 1 through 9, or red 1 through 9, or purple 1 through 9, whatever the case may be. But other people like to use a semantic like usage of their names, like I suggested, like the primary or button color, or like heading color, or whatever the case may be. So semantic color sync is using the functional side of it and then sort of like syncing it to a color style. So that's really helpful. Skew dat, like I said, it helps you skew things. Stark, you saw. Styler, you saw. Yeah, then the rest is like to do with like plugins, like, and the management of them. So yeah, so those are the ones that I use on a pretty regular basis. Sometimes like I will install them and then I uninstall them. So I try to clean them up because before I had this chat, because I knew that this would come up. But rest assured, we will actually do a whole thing on like cool plugins and stuff like that to help you speed up your workflow and bring in like real data from Google spreadsheets and all this kind of stuff. We'll spend a good session on just that for sure.
Awesome. And I know we actually had some questions if some of these are available for Sketch. I know that some of them are, but I also shared a link to the Sketch page where they have a list of featured plugins, and that's in the chat. Awesome.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I think like 99% of these are actually available. I think the only thing probably isn't is like Lottie files. But yeah, most of them should be available for Sketch. A lot of developers are doing both Sketch and Figma in lockstep in terms of plugin development. So I'd say that 95% of these should be there.
All right, people are fascinated with your color chart, and they're wondering where did you get that, if you made it, and how they can go about getting one themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so yeah, I actually base it off of Designlab's colors. So what I'm doing here is I grabbed the purple that we use for Designlab, and I grabbed the orange that we use for Designlab, and I grabbed the teal that we use for Designlab. But then I also like wanted to do a like primary brand colors, as well as our secondary and tertiary colors. But then I also have the functional or semantic uses outside of like primary and brand, right? So you have things like your error states, you have success states, you also have warning states, and you have interaction states. So those are the sort of like 5 things. So base, error, success, warning, and interaction. Plus brand. So brand can be primary. Oh, sorry, I just hit the microphone. Primary, secondary, or tertiary. And most companies do primary and secondary. Some companies do primary, secondary, and tertiary. At Designlab, we have 3. So yeah, so that's where that's coming from. So that's the idea of it. How I actually generated it is through that hike color scale generator. So that's linked in the chat at the top there. So if you scroll all the way to the top, there's a link for that in there. And what I sort of like did is I started off with a color. So let's say that I've got this hash 728195. So let's start off with that, and let's go to let's not go to that one. Let's go to Chrome here. So so this is using that hike GitHub thing, and I'm going to paste that in there, right? So let's just reset all of these to be 0, 0, and 0, and I'll explain some of the decisions that I'm making as I'm going along, right? So the cool thing about this is that you don't have to start in the middle. You could start at the end and then work your way forwards, or like whatever the case may be. But in this case, I've actually started in the middle. So what I want to do is I first want to start off with darkness, right? I want to like increase the darkness. So I at least want to make something darker one way and then lighter the other way. So you can sort of see that by default, that's actually done something really nice. Like I've actually created a color scale there very, very quickly. But that's just simply darkening or brightening the color, right? Like, so it's not great, right? Like color doesn't exactly work like that in real life. In real life, like color gets affected by the light, the color of the light as well. So what I like to try and do is I like to try and, when it goes darker, I like to try and go towards more blue. And when it gets lighter, I like to go towards more yellow. And this is more like just like a color. I don't even know what it'd be called, but it's just a nice way to colorize your designs. And your scales to be the way that I sort of think about it, I guess, is sunrise versus sunset. So when everything is when the light is coming over the mountains or whatever, you have a nice like bright yellowish pinky sort of like color that's coming over it. And then when the sun sets, it's like dark and blue, right? It doesn't go like the night sky doesn't go completely black. That would be awful to see a completely black night sky. It would like you're swimming in the void. It actually goes like this really like nice, really, really dark blue. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to aim for is like a sunrise versus a setting sun kind of thing, right? So when I'm doing that, like I'm looking at this hue angle and I'm trying to go towards more blue. So in this case, it actually already has quite a bit of blue in it, like because it's like a grayish, like steely blue kind of color. So I don't really need to do that much in terms of like making it go even darker. So I might go to like a -10. And then the saturation is exactly that. Like as I want to, like as I go negative, it's going to like desaturate it. And you guys can sort of see it goes like, I'm wringing out that sponge and it's going a bit like a little bit gross there. Or you can like keep it saturated. So it's like a richer, deeper, like fuller color, even when it goes dark. So even though this looks like it's almost black, it's actually like a really, really dark blue. And it's 1BDO2, 1BD, wow, I cannot speak right now, 1B202F. And that there is like just the difference between like a really good color set and versus a not. So let's probably not show it on gray. Let's use like the teal, for example, because then we can really sort of see the hue shift and how much of a difference that makes. So let's go back to Google Chrome and paste this in. I'm just going to leave the hue the same. I'm going to leave the darkness as 80. I'm going to leave the lightness as, or actually, let's put the darkness as 70 and then the lightness at 70. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm simply just changing the saturation. I'm going to leave that at 100%. Good, right? So it's 100% saturated there. So as you can sort of see, like as you saturate it completely, it's like a little bit too rich of the color. So what I tend to do is I like to desaturate it just a little bit, like by just setting it to like 50% for each of these. So it's not so intense. It's not like, oh my God, my eyes are going to like start bleeding because of it. And so again, like I said, like I try to go more darker for the, when I go darker, I try to go more blue. When I go lighter, I try to go more yellow. So let's just take a screenshot of what, oh, actually, better yet, let's use the copy SVG function. And I'll show you like the difference between like leaving it as just a basic color scale like this versus actually adjusting the hue angle. So if I adjust the hue angle, we can do this by trial and error. So as I can sort of go this way, it goes towards more yellow, because as you can sort of see, it's going a lot more green, right? And as I keep going, it's going to like change all to crazy colors. But if I go this way, it's actually going towards more blue, right? And it's not that I actually want it to change to completely blue. I just want to give it the hint of blue, right? Just like when you when the sun does go down, not everything in the world goes blue, right? It goes a darker shade of whatever the current. Like if you walked out and your skin turned blue, you'd probably need to see a doctor, right? Like that's worrying. So in this case, like I'm gonna go like maybe like -20 in this case, right? So as you can sort of see, it still keeps that teal color, but it's adding blue as we go along. Maybe that's probably a little bit too blue. Maybe I'll go like -10, right? So we're just giving that little bit extra to it. And generally, like whatever I do on one side, I do the opposite of the other side. So if I'm doing -10, I'm going to do +10 on the other side. So I times it by -1 essentially. Yeah, so then I've got the 10 here. So as you can sort of see, if I that's actually changed it towards a little bit more yellow as I've gone along. And again, like the difference is subtle overall, but if I paste this in and compare the two, you can see like how like this just has like a little bit more life to it. So this first one was just simply changing the darkness of it, like making it darker and lighter. This one is darker, lighter, and it's also then changing the hue slightly. And you can just see that it just gives it a little bit more life throughout the whole design. So yeah, that essentially that's what I did at scale. I just did that like 6 times over for all of those. And then some of those are then like I might hand pick a few of those. So I might like manually adjust some of the colors because I want to make sure that they're nice, or I want to make sure that they hit a specific color contrast ratio, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's how I created those colors there.
That's so awesome. I want to use that tool now. Okay, this one's actually a quick one. So the color picker, we have a question about how do you get the tiles of the actual colors that you're selecting? Because Callie is saying that she's just seeing a gradient, but there's no actual, like she's not seeing how to add a tile in the color picker.
Add a tile in the color picker.
I feel like when you like choose like a document color or like save like a document, so that way it's easy to pick later.
Is it these local colors?
Yes, like that.
Okay. Yeah. So this one here, this is basing it off of all the colors that are associated to styles for local colors. For document colors, these are literally all the colors that have been used. So the difference between here is this is what's in the styles versus this is what's actually living in the document, right? So if we click into this, you can sort of see that I've then created all of these colors that are then exclusive from these local colors, right? So you can sort of see how even though I'm using all of these like these greens, these warnings, all of this kind of stuff, if I was to create this orange here and it's not associated to it, you can click into this and this should then have that orange there as well, because it's no longer associated to a like the styles of it. So I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Well, I think in Sketch you have to manually click like a plus sign inside the color picker.
Yeah.
Versus this, it just seems like it's automatic.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right there. Yeah. So if I was to open up Sketch real quick, yeah, if I created a rectangle, and then you can sort of see that there is a function of global colors and document colors. So document colors are exactly that. They aren't automatically brought in, as Emily mentioned. They are actually like you have to sit there and manually edit them. So what that means is that you're adding them for this document, right? So it's only local to that document. You're only going to see those colors in that document. So that's what they mean by document colors in Sketch. In Figma, it's an automatic thing saying, in this document, there are these colors, right? So yeah, it's a little bit of a difference in language, but yeah, okay, that makes more sense if she was trying to compare it to Sketch's function.
Sweet. Next question. Are opacity and alpha value the same? And what would be a situation in which it would be advantageous to change the opacity of an element rather than the alpha value of an element and vice versa?
Yeah, so there's so alpha and opacity are the same thing, but you can do it on the the alpha channel is what it's called. So you have in a color space, you have different channels to describe your colors. So for example, if you're doing RGBA, so that's a red channel, a green channel, a blue channel, and then an alpha channel, and then you then have values associated to them. So you have like in RGB, you have the 0 from 0 to 255. So you would have in this case, you would have like you can sort of like create a few different ways of doing this. What's the best way to describe this? So so the first question is alpha and opacity the same? Yes. In this case, in terms of am I doing the alpha or the opacity on the color or on the object? That's different, right? So I'll show you the difference between those two. So let's say that I have again this pink, but I then wanted to change the so this number here and this number here are exactly the same. So if I change this to 50%, you'll see that it also changes to 50% here, right? So that's different there. Versus like if I did this and then I change this to 50%, you'll see that this is the same. But the difference here is that this is a pink with 50% alpha, whereas this is a full opacity of pink, but the layer itself is 50%. So there's a difference there. If I was to then change that to also 50%, then it would look like it was 25% of the original color, right? Which is that. So when would you use this in a real life situation? Well, there's a few different places, like drop shadows is one that comes to mind. Things like gradients, like you definitely can have like gradients for images. So for example, if I wanted to like put a gradient over the top of this guy, I can then sort of like set this to maybe I want to use like some of the colors here. So let's zoom out a little bit. I might want to use like this sort of like purple here as the color, and then same sort of thing here, and then use that as the same color there. But then what I might want to do is I might want to set this one to, I don't know, like 0, and then like have that as like a bit of a scrim over the top of it, and then add another little bit to it. So then I sort of like have a bit of a gradient going into it. So then I can like type in like cool man, and then have that there. And then so it's got like a nice amount of like contrast between everything. So yeah. But that's probably when you would use it a whole lot. Some people also use it in terms of like layering. So, for example, in macOS, there is opacity. Again, depending on like your personalization of macOS, you can make it a little bit more transparent and make the colors from windows behind you like come through the current window and so on. I in particular don't really like that, so I minimize that as much as possible. But yeah, there are some like UI situations where you might want to use opacity on the color or opacity on the actual layer. Generally, I try to do it on the layer as much as possible rather than on the color because yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier overall. But there are situations where you definitely can use it on the color as well, like a gradient, for example.
Awesome. And then, so kind of related in the same vein, is the use case for hex versus RGB versus others the same and just based on personal preference, or is there a distinct use case for each?
I think it's just the fine grain control mainly, like between all of them. The other thing is that when you go to convert, like let's say that we have again this purple, when you go into the code side of things, you'll notice that in CSS it gives you the hex value straight away. But sometimes your developer wants you to do things in HSL or RGB or whatever the case may be. It really depends on like how sophisticated your design system is in your code as to what you might be using day in and day out. For me personally, I use HSL because the I don't find the same fine grain control over that with the hex. Like I sort of mentioned with the HSL, you can actually manipulate all of those like colors, and maybe you want it just to be slightly less saturated. You can do that. You can go from 99 to 100 and do that rather than like inaccurately using like the actual like color picker tool here, like using this. So instead of like just like trying to slightly move it, like as you sort of saw there, like I clicked into it and it moved, right? Like that's not great for precision. So what I like, it'd be much easier for me to just like change this. Oh, I want to change this to 50, right? And hit enter, and it just moves it over slightly. So for me, like that'd be why is mostly precision. But also HSB isn't natively supported. Like HSB isn't natively supported by CSS, but RGB, HSL, and Hex are. You can do some like crazy things to change from HSB to HSL, like I sort of said before. But natively HSL and HSL-A and RGB and then RGB-A are all supported in CSS to be able to do all of that. So if you're doing anything in web, you'll be able to use that straight out of the gate. So you and your developer are speaking the same language. You're not trying to convert everything from this this color space to another color space and using that.
All right, since we have the color picker open, do you use
Mm-hmm.
HSL to tint the color?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as you sort of saw with the color scale, like that's my go-to first. But then I might actually use this to like go up and down, like using that. And as you can sort of see, it does it in a perfectly straight line, and I can then like adjust as I need to. Whereas if I was doing it with my mouse, it's a lot less accurate. You can't like hold down Shift or anything. It just goes wherever it wants, right? So using this, setting the value to 260 or whatever, setting this to like 60 and this to 45, like it's just so much quicker and faster to do that. But yeah, my first protocol is to use a tool like the one that Hike made, the color scale generator. But then I might tweak it manually using the HSL values.
So awesome. Okay. Back to the color palette, and this is just more, is there a recommended number of shades and tints to include in a color palette like the one you have? And I know you mentioned that you do check for accessibility, so that I feel like the answer is, do you check the contrast? Yes, I would say if you are doing something like this, that is something to look for.
Yeah, for sure. So So let's start off with the amount of overall colors. So the amount of overall colors is really dependent on your brand, right? But you are going to need some base colors, right? So you're going to need some so what I mean by base is things like drop shadows, borders, typography, like those are going to be your grays, your shades of gray. Every design has shades of gray, whether you like it or not. You're going to be using shades of gray. Every design system should have something to denote between an error state, a success state, a warning state, and an interaction state. Right? I think error and warning and success are pretty easy to understand. Interaction is a little bit of a weirder one, but error is a current screw up, right? So let's say that you typed in your password, you hit enter, error, right? That is a current present danger. Whereas a success is like, yay, everything's great. Like that's pretty easy to work out. But what warning is like, hey, something's about to happen. So it's a future prediction of something. So, hey, you might not want to do that. Like, are you sure you want to do that kind of thing? Versus like an error and a success is like the actual present and current state. So what is interaction? Well, an interaction is can be used for a few different things. So for some people, they use it for the focus ring around a button. So when you tab through your interface, you get like a focus ring to sort of like say, hey, for people who can't use a mouse or have trouble using like other input methods, they can use that as a pseudo selectable state, which is called a focus state, which allows them to like say, this is the thing that's in focus right now. And then if I want to, I can interact with that. So it's not actually selected. The best way to sort of like think about it is like that like most people will be familiar with is like a hover state, right? A hover state is kind of like there's intent there, like, hey, this thing is interactable, but I haven't actually clicked onto it yet. I haven't actually done anything with it. So an interaction state like that, like focus or hover, can be used in that kind of thing. So things like a text field for an input. If you just have like a normal text field, it's just going to be like white and a light gray border, right? Pretty basic text field. But when you click into it, what color does that go? Like what color does that border go when you click into it? Some people just do a darker shade of gray. That's fine. But it's not as noticeable when you're trying to differentiate what's going on between everything. So I like to use that as well as, like I said, the focus ring around a button, like if you're about to select something, and so on and so forth. It's also good for things where it's like not so much a warning, but it's like an informational sort of thing, like saying like, hey, by the way, this is like what's about to happen, right? So this might be something like on a dashboard or something like that. It might sort of have a notification saying that that you're maybe not your account's overdue, but maybe something like, hey, by the way, we're going to be doing some updates like at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Tomorrow morning kind of thing. So sorry for any inconvenience, but that's what's going to happen. So it's more of a notification that is neither bad nor good. Like it's like just purely informational. So that interaction / information color, I use that. Then there's brand. So brand, like I mentioned, you can have primary and secondary. That's generally like most companies. But then you can also have a tertiary color, and that's what Designlab has. So those are why I selected those colors in general. And you can sort of see that like I've actually named like what they are. So warning and brand, interaction and brand, and then success, error, and base. Okay, in terms of how many colors that you do, that is completely up to you. I personally like 9. I find 9 is good because if you think about even as something as simple as a button, right? So let's take this this button here. Let's go into this one here. Let's get out of this guy here. So let's take something as simple as this bottom and use this purple 600. Perfect. And let's paste it over here. All right. So by default, we have our default state, right? Default. And then we're going to have at least a hover, right? And then we're going to at least have a selected, or like some people call it pressed, some people call it active, and so on. Right. The HTML version of that is active. The sort of like touch friendly name of that is pressed, because you can click on it, or you can click on it with a mouse, or you can tap on it with a finger. So people say pressed, and so on. So let's say that we have this, and if we were just using color alone to go through that, you can sort of see that you would have to go to the next layer up. And then for this one, you can then go to the next layer up again. As you hover over it, it goes darker, and then you go to the next thing there. So when you hover over it, it goes a little bit darker. When you click into it, it then has a bit of a color change again. So just by doing that, you actually have like 3 shades being used just with one single thing. If you were to do it a little bit further, like go into it a little bit deeper, I'll show you like how I'd go about that, and go to components. So if I was to go a little bit deeper into that, I've got a default, a hover, I've got a focus, which is that focus ring that I was talking about. Then I have an active, and then I have a disabled. So the disabled is just opacity, right, of the layer. There isn't, it's not actually, so as you can sort of see, it's using 40%. It's using purple 700, but it's using a 40% layer opacity. But what it's doing here is that you're using 1 color, 2 colors, 3 colors for the focus, and then a 4th color for the active. So that's 4 straight away. And then if I was to do a secondary bottom, I've got 5 here. So for this color is actually the same one that we use for, I think, this one here. This one here, the 700. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have 5 colors for the background, 6 colors for the background. That's the same color there, and then 7 colors for the for that as well. So all in all, you then have 7 like shades of just that purple, just by creating 2 components, right? So 2 components, that's like nowhere near where you're going to finish, right? So that's where, like, that's why I like to use 9, is because I'm already using like 7 shades of purple, and I've only created 2 buttons, right? With all the different states. So instead of like painting myself into a corner and going, crap, now I don't have anywhere to move. Like I'm actually giving myself that freedom, but the freedom, but within constraints, right? So I'm not sort of like going, oh, like let's just like have 1,000 colors, and they're all available to me. But it's actually saying like, here's a prescriptive list, but it's also nice and like it flows and all that kind of stuff. It's nice and succinct with all of it. So it helps me create the thing that I need, as well as staying nice and I guess like systematically in the right place with it all. I don't have to go, now I need to add another purple. I need to add another purple. I need to add another purple. Like, because I just realized I need to create an input now. It's like, okay, well, if I create an input, what does that look like? Well, I might sort of like use this as like the default, and then I might use this as like the purple to then sort of like say as my focus ring there. So I don't have to like regenerate a whole bunch of colors just to do the same sort of thing. So that's why I use 9. Some people use 5 and they get away with 5. 5 to me is like too little, but 9 to me is good. The reason why I do 9 as well is because I have a middle color, and then I have 4 shades lighter, 4 shades darker. That's just a nice amount there. And yeah, so hopefully that answered. I know that was a little bit of a longer answer, but hopefully that answered your question there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I've never seen that process before because I've always used color charts like this, but I've never actually like developed one, so this is pretty cool. Okay, we have three more questions, and I feel like they should be fairly quick. One of them you kind of had an example for, but we'll save that
Mhm.
one for last. So this one is really quickly. Could you go over some safe colors or accessibility colors?
That is like how long is a piece of string? Because it really sort of like depends on what color you're associating it to. So if you're associating it to white and black, there's only so much colors there. So as you can probably tell, things like green, yellows, and stuff like that are more harmful to the eye. So they tend to be less they tend to contrast less well with white, for example. So if you're going for white text on something like that, then yeah, like you're going to be severely limited. But the other thing is, I keep going to Safari. I should go to Chrome here. I'll chuck this one in here as well. So this is Random Alley, and this is a color generator that then grabs like two completely different colors and then like smashes them together to make a really high contrast color palette. So you can use these to like find some really cool like combinations that aren't just using black or white for the text. So there isn't like a list of like colors that are like quote unquote safe, right? That would take forever. Like the best thing to do is to install something like Stark, like Able, and just check as you're creating things. Make sure that you're creating design safe things. The other cool thing to do is also like as you're creating buttons and components and all that kind of stuff is to check both of these. So if I was to eyedrop that, and then eyedrop the white, and then select both of those, and then go to the Able friction, and then I select both of those, and I've got a 6.13, right? So I'm looking for 4.5 and above, and yeah, that hits it really, really easily. And then as I go darker, it's going to become even easier to notice what's going on there. So for me, like like I yeah, it how long is a piece of string is definitely the an accurate thing there because yeah, you could never list out all the different things, but use plugins to your advantage. Like check things like as you're creating them. Like I'm not sitting here trying to make certain colors um, hit a certain threshold at this point. What I'm trying to do is when I then start to use them in the real world, so I use them as like error states and success states, and I use like the borders, and I use like different levels of text, like for hierarchy and stuff like that. That's when I start to use these and try to make sure that I'm using the right contrast ratios for them. So that's when I might handpick them later on, is when I'm actually starting to use them. And then I realize, oh, this text needs to be slightly lighter, but it also needs to be at this level of contrast ratio to the rest of it. So yeah, the other complicating factor here is this is just in light mode. If you're doing a dark mode, more often than not, you're going to be using a whole nother spectrum of colors as well, another palette of colors. So yeah. So yeah, sorry that it's a bit vague and not really answering your question, but it's yeah, it's a hard one to answer. Like here's all the color safe things. It used to be like that way back in the day because monitors could only actually portray a certain amount of colors. But now with all this like wide ranging color spaces, you can actually get super accurate colors. And you don't only have a list of like 256 colors to choose from. You actually have quite a few to choose from. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we could do a whole thing on accessibility. And I
Mhm.
feel like, at least for my personal use, like it's less about the colors that you're choosing. It's more about how you use the colors.
Yeah, it's the context for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Last two. basically we're asking for maybe not full examples where you're showing us how to do this, but earlier you showed us how to layer, a gradient on top of the image to kind of show, that you can, just kind of adjust what an image looks like. But for the
Mhm.
other instances where, there's like a radial gradient, where would you use something like that?
Yeah, so a radial gradient. What I like to use a radial gradient for is things for like backgrounds and stuff like that. So let's say that I have a high fidelity page like this, and maybe I want to let's copy and paste this desktop version over here. So maybe I want to give this a little bit more life to it, right? So right now it's pretty interesting. Like this page is pretty interesting. Like I've got some elements going on and so on and so forth. But it could always go. It could always like have a little bit more life to it, right? So in this case, let's zoom out a little bit and let's grab this like purple here. So I've got this like purple background. So it's purple 900 right now. So let's use a few of these colors. So we've got this purple, and I'm going to use maybe I'll go from purple 5 and purple 6 and purple 7 and purple 8, and just play around with it a little bit and sort of see like what's going on. All right. So for this one, I'm just going to detach this, and I'm going to change this to a radial gradient. Right. So by default, it looks butt ugly. It's not great. So what I usually do, like I mentioned, is I do it from the top right to the bottom left, or top left to the bottom right. Doesn't really matter. But let's just do that to get us started. And in this kind of way, I might then change this color to be this color there, and then this color to that color there, right? And that hasn't really done anything like totally dramatic, but it's just given it a little bit more life than what it did before. And you can sort of like play around with that and figure out like what ways the best way for you to do that. So you might even like go like a super light color there. You may even like change it completely and do more of a gradient like that. But it's just giving it a little bit of like life outside of just solid color, right? Solid color is perfectly fine, but in the real world, like if you look around your room right now, nothing is a perfect solid color. Like that just simply doesn't exist. What actually exists is light refracting off of different surfaces, bouncing off of everything. So even if I'm looking at my monitor right now, it's a black bezel monitor, but on one side it's slightly lighter, and on the other side, in the bottom right, it's slightly darker because there's a more bright light on this side of me than there is on the other side. So there's a lot more light here than there is down the bottom right here. So I have a sort of like a nice like gradient, and it's kind of like an orangey gradient because the light is quite a warm light. So I'm getting the color from the light, and then I'm getting the color from the original object, and there's a bit of like bounce off effect, and that then is bouncing off the room, and it's all bouncing around the walls, and even the walls themselves, like they cast a light as well. So when you say when do I use them, again, just whenever you want, right? I particularly like to use them because it just adds that little bit of like life to it. It adds without like going so totally crazy with your colors. You can actually just add like a really slight gradient between there, and then comparing that to that just gives it just that little bit of extra life to the project, right? You sort of like just give it just that little bit extra. So both of these look good, right? Like there's nothing wrong with either one of these, but this one just has a little bit more of like excitement behind it. This one is just a little bit more safe, right? So that's the difference there. Is like there's no right or wrong way to use them, but generally like what I like to do is I like to play around with them and sort of see what's going on, and how I might be able to like use these. And you might even do a really subtle one like I just sort of did there. And yeah, that there like is like a hell of a lot more subtle, but it also like just sort of like like peaks out this little like purple here and all that kind of stuff. So it just makes it just that gives that a little bit of dynamicism between your designs. So definitely not required. Definitely you don't have to use it, but it's just giving it a little bit more life than what you're used to.
All right. And then final question, because we get this question every time. Any additional resources for more Figma training that you recommend?
Yeah, not at the moment, because we're going to be going through all of it. Right, we're going to be doing this every single week. So make sure that you're plugged into it. There are the Figma events that Figma hosts themselves. So if you're wanting to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, like Figma does hold their own events. I think it's like figma.com/events. Pretty easy to find. And they do a very similar thing where they go through with some of their designers and some of their advocates. They go through and explain how to use the tool, or very like nitty gritty kind of details. So we will also be getting to that level very, very shortly. I just wanted to go through the absolute basics so that no matter what skill level you're at, you can sort of like watch these videos and then just level up as we level up as well.
Yep, for sure. And obviously we have there's YouTube out there, there's Google, so there's a bunch of other things that we probably don't know about. But yeah, sweet. This was awesome. Thank you, Kieran, so much for all of this information. Yeah, and like he said, we're going to have this every week, and it'll be a new topic every week. If there's anything specific that you'd like to hear and you're part of the Designlab community, message me or message Kieran, and we'll get that on our list. We got a bunch of ideas from the last 2 weeks. And if you're not in our community, feel free to, I believe, respond to your registration email, and you might be able to contact us and just let us know what you want to hear as well. But like I posted, this is recorded. This will be up on our YouTube channel. Last week's episode is also there now. So feel free to check that out. And then we will see you next week. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.